This is IGN. The band's Benchmark docuseries gets remastered with an extra episode. This is your IGN review of the Beatles Anthology 2025 by Tara Bennett. The Beatles Anthology 2025 is available on Disney Plus now. Fans of the Beatles have been well enabled by Disney Plus since it launched in 2019, with a steady release of exclusive Fab Four documentaries, including Peter Jackson's The Beatles Get Back in 2021, Let It Be restored in 2024, Beatles 64 in 2025, and now the remastered The Beatles Anthology 2025. It's staggering to consider that it's been 30 years since the ABC network first broadcast the original 8 episodes of the Beatles Anthology in the U.S. as a 3-night event. Directed by Jeff Wanfor and Bob Smeaton, the series marked the first time that the surviving Beatles, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr, and Yoko Ono and Sean Lennon, representing the late John Lennon estate, worked together to tell their story in their own words. The docuseries also utilized the massive collection of unused Beatles footage curated and cataloged in 1971 by Neil Aspinall, their longtime friend and manager of Apple Corps, and their own individual personal archives. The result was an exhaustive, insightful, and very personal record of their shared history, starting from their childhoods in Liverpool through to the dissolution of the band in 1969. While that iteration of the Beatles Anthology was accepted as the definitive source for the band's history, it was limited by what could be accomplished with the video and audio mastering of the time, as well as broadcast standards in 1995. HDTV wouldn't be introduced until 1998. With this updated version, not only is a worthy 9th episode added to the whole, but the overall footage restoration and upscaling is pristinely done by Peter Jackson's Wingnut Films and Park Road Post, who were responsible for the Beatles' Get Back and Let It Be restorations. That's matched by the stellar audio remastering and remixing by Giles Martin, son of the legendary Beatles producer George Martin. He utilized MAL AI demixing technology to do what good AI does, achieving digital separation of audio layers to get maximum clarity with voice, instruments, and background noise. That means crisp song fidelity throughout the new episode, as well as in Lennon's voice in the new Beatles songs that came from this project. Even if you aren't a Beatles fan, the Anthology series stands apart from most band docs because of its contextual value as a historical time capsule of the post-war global music scene. Told primarily through interviews recorded from 1991 to 1994 with the surviving members and using archival interviews of Lennon, the docuseries isn't concerned with how the outside world perceived them. This was their opportunity to reflect on the magic of their intersected lives, how they applied their working-class values of non-stop gigging to evolve into a cracking little band, and their remembrances of how they weathered the global obsession of them and their music that started with Please Please Me in 1963 and never really stopped. The only new material in the Beatles Anthology 2025 comes in Episode 9, which is a more formal edit of the special features footage from the extras disc on the original Anthology's DVD box set, and some unused material from the original edit. Director Oliver Murray of Now and Then, The Last Beatles Song, takes his storytelling cues from Peter Jackson and allows the band's candid moments to speak volumes about band dynamics from their waning days right up through the sessions for the doc in the early 90s. Murray also constructs a timeline for the creation process behind the Lennon demos that inspired their creation of Free as a Bird, Real Love, and what would eventually become 2023's Now and Then. As they relearn to create in a space together, there's a lot of joy in just witnessing them collaborating and writing as a unit again. There's a warmth, rapport, and truth that blooms before our eyes, and it's emotional to watch. In keeping with that, Episodes 1 through 8 remain a fascinating watch, not only because of the documentation of their meteoric rise, but because of how distance from the Beatles informs their unique mood each brings to the interviews that assess their memories of that crazy decade in their lives. While the great Beatles experiment only lasted a decade, the music they made and the accelerated rate in which they matured musically remained singular to modern pop music. In turn, they inspired countless musicians that came after, while continuing their own musical journeys. Not many bands hit a pinnacle of success like the Beatles did, then get to reunite to set the record straight while still wrestling with their legacy in real time on camera. The anthology remains infinitely watchable because it's not just documenting a timeline. It captures the evolving, complicated relationships of its existing members, who on one hand can be united in mourning the loss of Lennon, yet still bristle with their memories of one another. The Beatles Anthology 2025 is the cherry on top of the definitive examination of the band, as told by the group themselves and their families. The restoration is exceptional, and the additional 9th episode provides fresh insight into the Fab Four's dynamic, which is heartbreaking and profound. The Beatles Anthology 2025's IGN score? 10 out of 10. Thanks for listening to IGN. My name is Tony Jackson, and for the latest updates on the Beatles Anthology 2025, visit us at IGN.com.
Spoken Layer.